who got rejected from top colleges and now wants to be used as a prop by conservative media to blame black people for it. Wang couldn't get into Princeton, Caltech, MIT, Harvard, Carnegie Mellon, or UC Berkeley. He thinks because he got a 1590 on the SATs and good grades, he's entitled to a spot, apparently. But the logic is so flawed because there are more applicants with 1600s on the SATs than Harvard can even accept, and John didn't even get a 1600. So playing by his rules he loses, and playing by the regular rules he loses because getting good grades and good test scores, as we've known for decades, is not enough to get into top colleges. This kid sounds like a very lost cliche. And the kicker of all of this is that UC Berkeley actually is prohibited from using race-conscious admissions. The state of California has banned this practice for public universities. So it didn't even apply. He got rejected for other reasons, like not being interesting enough. And to every minority who hears that they're only where they are because of affirmative action policies, know that that is total BS. You belong there.
Let's yap about how Asian Americans fucked up affirmative action. Guys, I'm running on a broken nail and a Celsius, and I'm so angry. The worst part was that this was just a part of some ploy from a white man. There are three things that are important to talk about in this case. Number one, it's important to understand what affirmative action is. Two, how white supremacy actually pits people of color against each other, and Asian Americans, I'm looking at you and your fucking dumbasses. And the interesting dynamic of Asian Americans with other POC communities, particularly the black community. Joe, what's affirmative action? Affirmative action is a policy that came about during the civil rights era that sets systematic procedures within federal policy to ensure that historically marginalized groups were given opportunities for advancement and inclusion, particularly within college admissions. What I want everyone watching this to understand is that affirmative action, contrary to popular belief, is not a ticket into college, especially if you are a person of color. It's not. In fact, affirmative action was actually created just to ensure that white legacy kids weren't the only people given opportunities to actually succeed in white society. Because of a lot of black activists during the civil rights era, all people, not just black people within the United States now actually had a chance of doing well in America. Now, affirmative action was already deeply unpopular because anytime white people have to share something that should be for the rest of us, they get a little bit, bitchy. It also upset a lot of people from the Asian American community, particularly because of two things. One was because a lot of people grew up under the model minority myth, which was this myth that led a lot of us to believe that we were the exception, that we were, the good minority that just followed through with all of the rules and procedures that white people had already set for us. And the second thing is just the idea of the American dream. A lot of Asian people just happen to be immigrants, not all of us, of course, but it also essentially allowed us to believe that, if we worked hard, we would get it. Obviously, that's not true. I work really hard and all I have is anxiety and depression. The federal ruling for affirmative action starts to collapse when this 18-year-old named John Wang, who has a 1590 SAT score and a very good GPA, gets really butthurt about the fact that he didn't get to a bunch of elitist schools. And he starts talking about this a lot on media, and he basically claims that the reason that he didn't get into these schools is because he's Asian American. Now, I don't think that this is entirely untrue because I do believe that people of color in general have a harder time getting into more traditional elitist schools. However, the issue that I have with this little twat is that he claimed that African Americans actually have an easier time getting into these schools because of affirmative action. He ends up going to this organization called the Students for Fair Admissions that basically is just this whole thing that's against affirmative action entirely and has been since it was ever created. What happens is that they give him this calculator and basically tell him that with his stats, if he was a black person, he would have a 95% chance of getting admitted into Harvard. Truly? Where are they finding this calculator and where can I destroy it? Because that doesn't even make any sense. The case eventually gets picked up by someone named Edward Blum, who is the head of Students for Fair Admissions. Not only is he the head of this dumbass organization, he's also a white Republican litigator who literally has decades worth of experience trying to dismantle everything that happened within the civil rights era because he just hates people of color that much. Particularly, this man has been looking, searching, desperately praying for a reason to dismantle affirmative action. And the funniest thing is that he doesn't even have actual experience as a litigator. He is professionally known as an amateur litigator who just doesn't like people of color and seeing us winning apparently apparently. Him and his groupies at his little org basically take all of these testimonies from Asian American people like John Wang and create a case against Harvard that he takes all the way to the Supreme Court to essentially argue that affirmative action is actually discriminatory against Asian Americans and the rest of the population. And it's so embarrassing at the fact that Asian Americans were getting used by this white man, and we fell for it. We fell for it so hard because of the internal racism that we have within ourselves. But when I say ourselves, Asian American community, you know which particular one I'm talking about. You know which subset I'm angry at. In June of 2023, the Supreme Court decides to side with Edward Bloom and says that affirmative action is actually unconstitutional under the Equal Protection Act of the 14th Amendment. So basically, this little white man, he gets his way simply just because Asian Americans don't know how to use critical thinking when it comes to this and realizing that this actually isn't going to help us out in the long run. Edward Blum dismantles decades of hard work done by black activists to make sure that not only their community, but the rest of us are set to go when it comes to college admissions. Make it a little bit more fair, because it's never gonna actually be equal, but at least make it a little bit better. And we fell for it. We fell for it because Asian Americans sometimes were idiots. There was this survey done with Asian Americans in college, and it turns out that an overwhelming majority of us actually support affirmative action and understand why it's important. It's just a small portion of our community that just decides to scream the loudest because they still have it in their head that we are the model minority, that we have to follow through with the American dream. I also feel like it erases a lot of the actual very intense history Asian Americans have with activism within the United States, particularly in conjunction and in gratitude with the black community. Think about Yellow Peril supports black power during the civil rights era, and the black community support of Asian Americans during protests against the Vietnam War. And as a gay Filipino first-gen American, I remember hearing about this court case and essentially crying when I found out that affirmative action was going to get repealed. Not having affirmative action basically protects people.
Welcome to the United States, where meritocracy reigns supreme. If you work hard, you can achieve anything. Unless, of course, your parents couldn't afford to buy your way into the college. But hey, who needs fairness when you have the legacy admissions? God bless America. Welcome to the United States, where white people and black people get the same economic opportunities. That's why the wealth gap is so tiny. You can barely see it. Oh, why the wealth gap is so tiny, you can barely see it. Wait, that's just a poverty line. God bless America. Welcome to the United States, where everyone has the freedom to pursue happiness, unless that happiness involves affordable houses, healthcare, or a living wage. But hey, freedom, not just free, right? God bless America. Welcome to the United States, where justice is blind, just like those who think the prison system isn't as appropriately filled with black people, people of color. But don't worry, if you're rich enough, justice can be persuaded to take a peek. God bless America. Welcome to the United States, where we believe in equality, education for all. That's why public schools in wealthy neighborhoods have everything, while others have, they have a roof most of the time. God bless America. Hello guys, welcome back to the channel. This is Eugene Duke Stories. That's a poem that I created to satirically describe the United States. It was just giving a laugh. That's the whole poem. It's a satire. So I know for the longest time we have been having inequalities between white people and black people, right? And I've been talking about this. And we also have different populations who comes to the United States. That includes Asians, we have Latinos, so we have Asian Americans, we have Latino Americans. We also have a section of, I'm not saying that all Asians are bad people, but we have Asian Americans who really think that they are white, yet they are not white. And there is nothing, or there is no accolade which is being given to people who are white, you know. So we have a story of this student who scored, and of course he kind of passed the exam, right? And he demands that he needs to have higher education. And people came out, including fellow Asians, to also address this issue. you know, affirmative action, it was just something like a negotiation. It's like telling the oppressor, like, hey bro, you guys have eaten so much for a long time, let us also eat. It's like a negotiation. Let's also have these opportunities that you have. Let our children also go to school. Let other people also access better healthcare and services, right? So amongst other group of people that have benefited from affirmative actions, which actually was being which Black Americans during those times of fighting for civil rights of people in the Black community, they fought, and things like affirmative actions came, and Black women, people from the marginalized community were now started being considered, right? So I want us to watch this video. It's going to explain a lot of things that probably we need to understand as people who also want to learn about some things which happens in the United States. So let's dive right into the video. As you always know, these are presenter Agent Stories, and if you're watching this video for the first time, I'll ask you to join my membership, subscribe to the channel, and really get to see what I can offer you. Until then, let's dive right into the video.
Who would rather not see people like me enter into spaces where we can actually enact change for the better. It protects people like Edward Blum who want to make sure that our country stays a white supremacist country. And for Asian Americans, those that are watching this that have come to believe that, Black people are taking all of the opportunity away from us, they're not. There is someone who's doing that. Things aren't going to change because you worked hard. Things are going to change because you realize that the system that you're working under is inherently not made for you. And there are people that want to change that. You just have to open up your mindset. Edward Blum. Edward Blum. If I am going to hell, I am going to make sure to drag you down with me.
I'm Asian American, and this will be controversial, but I hope you'll hear me out to the end. I attended Harvard twice, for undergrad and for business school, and I fully support affirmative action and need to address this false narrative that Asians don't want affirmative action. I resent my race being hijacked to make a case for ending diversity. The Asian American admissions experience has been a primary focus of the current Supreme Court lawsuit, which I really resent because it's been orchestrated by Edward Blum, a white man who has a track record of wanting to end diversity and inclusion in other areas of American life as well. He initially took a white plaintiff before to the Supreme Court against the University of Texas and failed. And so he decided he needed Asian plaintiffs, and so he advertised for them. And now Asian Americans are being used as a wedge against other communities of color. The Harvard Asian American Association and the Asian Alumni Association are both pro-affirmative action. Harvard cannot create a campus that is diverse enough to fulfill its educational mission without considering race as just one factor among many factors. I mean, we've seen massive declines in minority admissions at universities when affirmative action is eliminated. And higher education and these institutions are pipelines to leadership in our society, a society that's still, unfortunately, far from equal and just, one that still has a lot of work to do to close racial disparities and combat systemic racism, one that all of that became painfully clear for this nation with the Black Lives Matter movement. There are racial disparities in education going back centuries in this country, and today, if you're Black, you're more likely to be in an under-resourced school, but also more likely to be viewed as having less academic potential. I mean, yes, in an ideal world, race wouldn't be considered in admissions because in that ideal world, everyone would have access to the same kinds of resources and there'd be no systemic racism. But that is unfortunately not the world yet that we live in today. So what can we do now? I mean, it unfortunately does seem inevitable that affirmative action will be struck down this year. So what's the point of all of this? For one, I think it's important for Asian Americans to speak out versus just simply being used as a pawn in a political battle. I'm also surprised that more people generally aren't speaking out, again, given higher education's then trickle-on impact on future employment opportunities, income potential, leadership roles. This also shows how much voting matters. Please vote in the midterms next week. Early voting has started. Lawmakers have the power to reverse things like the impact of the Supreme Court decision on affirmative action or Roe v. Wade.
Meet John Wang, who got rejected from top colleges and now wants to be used as a prop by conservative media.
Okay, so I've been seeing this everywhere and I gotta say something. So I graduated from high school back in 2016 with honors. My GPA was like either a 3.0 or a 3.1. So back then I took the ACT test because back then colleges and universities looked at ACT test scores and GPA. So for me, I wanted to go to university and not community college because that's where I felt like I belong. I would fit in perfectly there. And the university that I went to, that's where my sister went to. Like I had gotten a tour, everything. I was like, this is where I want to be. However, I did not have the ACT score. I had GPA, but not ACT score. I took the ACT test like 3 times. 2 times the first 2 were free, and the third one I had to pay for. And I ended up making the same score every single time, which was a 15. And I kept getting told, go to community college, go to community college, go to community college. But I was like, no, I want to go to university. So the university that I graduated from, they offered me an alternative to get in because they saw how much I wanted to go in there. And plus I told them about how my sister graduated from there. Plus they knew about my extracurricular activities that I have done in high school. So the alternative was that I had to take this type of test, which was math and English, and I had to pass one of them. I had to take it twice, but I did end up eventually passing, got accepted in, graduated from the university in 2020. And what I think this dude, John Wang, needed to understand, because I learned this from my professors and I take this through life in general. Employers don't care about your GPA or where you went to college at. They do not care, not one bit. They just care about your work experience and your skill. You can have that you went to Yale, MIT, or Berkeley. They do not care at all. Because this whole situation with John Wang, I'm like, dude, everybody's going to laugh their butts off at this case.
When Asian Americans are attacking affirmative action and DEI and standing for socioeconomic entitlement to the exclusion of others, especially Black Americans, who paved the way for the civil rights that we have here in the United States, and including lower income, recent arrival, and especially Southeast Asian Americans, I will fight against that all day, every day, because regardless of race, it's what's right. But fortunately for me, multiple polls from multiple sources over multiple years have consistently shown that a majority of Asian Americans across most Asian demographics support affirmative action. So it's looking like the Asian Americans who are attacking affirmative action and DEI are in fact the traitors. And this becomes especially apparent when you look at the organizations that are bringing these Asian American cases against affirmative action. Like Edward Bloom of Students for Fair Admission, who had been attacking affirmative action in higher education for decades to no avail with white plaintiffs, he brought the cases against Harvard and UNC using Asian American plaintiffs. And the Pacific Legal Foundation, which was founded by members of Ronald Reagan's welfare reform team, who brought the lawsuit against Thomas Jefferson High School. And the Manhattan Institute, which filed amicus briefs against affirmative action in the Harvard, UNC, and Thomas Jefferson cases. Now, without infantilizing the Asian Americans who have signed on to be represented by those organizations, they have autonomy, they know what they are doing. But those are not Asian American-led organizations. Those are white-led conservative and libertarian organizations. And if the plaintiffs knew their history, they would be aware that those organizations represent people who only care about Asian Americans insofar as they can use this as a wedge to cause harm to Black Americans. Now contrast that with Asian Americans Advancing Justice, one of several Asian American-led organizations who filed amicus briefs in favor of affirmative action in the Harvard, UNC, and Thomas Jefferson cases. So it's looking like it is the Asian Americans who are attacking affirmative action and DEI, knowing that their actions are causing harm to Black Americans and lower income, recent arrival, and especially Southeast Asian Americans, who are in fact the race.
So yeah, God bless America, right? Today, if you go anywhere, you'll be told that, this is a country where we practice meritocracy. This is a country where we practice practice, we practice fairness. And if you work hard, you are able to achieve everything that you want. You've been told that, right? Why did Black people have to negotiate for affirmative action? For also them to feel like they are included, right? That's just general. Now let's talk about the situation of this Asian American student who claims that Black people have been given I a chance or I stand towards this, let me tell you. And in as much as what I know is that black people, especially who fought for the civilization, who fought for the civil, we have people fought for the civil rights movements, and things like affirmative action came into place. Now they started to advocate for black people to also get health facilities. They started to advocate for black people to also get have higher education levels. They advocated for equal chances in political representation. That's just a negotiation after a long time of oppression where we only had white people who dominated all these spaces, who received good housing, who received good health, who had good education. That's why we have economic disparities. That's why we have educational disparities. Even the neighborhood which black people and white people stay, there is a big contrast, and you can see that. So black people fought for equal rights. Things like affirmative action came. And when affirmative action came, it was not only benefiting black Americans, it was also benefiting immigrants, also benefiting other group of people, right? So we have an entitled brother, that is this Asian American boy, man, to say, who feels like black people are not putting that much effort, but they are being so much considered as compared to people who have worked hard. And he's trying to follow what is called the meritocracy. That's a begin that if you work hard, if you are on the list in regards to your hard work, you're gonna get it, right? So they need to know that we have black people who have performed way better than him, who doesn't even have a job, who doesn't even gotten the chance to go get a higher learning institution, to go to a higher learning institution, right? So I believe that we need to talk about these things. We need to discuss about these things. And it is right to see that people came out to talk about this, because it is right for them to, go and talk about this. I feel like it is something which should be done. And all that I've been urging black people is to stay unified, is to have the unity, is to know that the only asset that a black person has is unity. So it is unity itself that will make us stand together. Because when an injustice happens in the black community, if we don't have people to talk for us, we are not going to see white people coming to defend us. It's us by us. Let people call us black supremacists, right? Because if we stand for our rights, that's when we're being called black supremacists. But if they stand for their rights, it is called their rights, right? So who is wrong and who is right, So what I advocate for black people to always stand together, black people to find their stamina. And the only asset, I'll say it again, I've said it before and I'll not tire saying this, the only asset that a black person has, it's unity. So you as a black person just need to display high level of unity amongst yourself. Let's stand for our brothers. If we see an injustice happening in the community, let's stand together and talk about this. And I hope that, and some also other people who think that black people are enjoying privileges and that what black people are doing is not enough and what they're doing is enough, that they should be considered. I think that it is right for them to understand the history, to understand the pain, to understand the PTSD, to understand the trauma that black people have gone through, their ancestors, what they've gone through, for them to just come like where they are today. So, and I'm also glad that this Asian American man, I don't know why I keep saying boy, I was put into place because people know the truth, including fellow Asians. So I believe that we have good Asians, except for people who think that they are white, right? They are people who are entitled so much and they think that other groups are not doing well enough, and it is just them who are doing well as compared to other people. Well, I would like to, I'd just like to know what you think about this video. What do you think? Was this Asian American guy right to your stance? Because if we look at the meritocracy, what he performed or what he achieved We have black people who haven't seen, or who their success haven't seen the light, and they have achieved more than that, right? So let's understand each other. Let's unify. That's what I can say about this, So just tell me what to think about this video. As you always know, this is your presenter, Eugene Duke Stories, and if you're watching this video for the first time, I'll ask you to subscribe to the channel, join our membership, and really get to see what we can offer you. I've started the Patreon movement. If you haven't joined, please, I'll urge you to go and join my Patreon. It's on my bio, because there's some videos that I would like to be posting, but I can't post them because of following the YouTube policies, and it is safe to have a fair play so that you and I get to gain information without limitation. Until then, let's see each other next time. Peace, love, and reparations / harmony. Salute.